Welcome to the podcast, Kelly Yale. It's great to have you here. You and I have been friends for a long time now, and there is so much we can talk about. But the one place I want to start is, why are Ohio fans so loyal to sports? Like, it's that one state more than any other where they will just kill and maul people for their team.
One of the things I like to tell people is how where I grew up around the Akron area, when babies are born in that city, they literally give a little boy like a tiny little football, and they give little girls like little pom-poms. It's that crazy. And everyone always says, "Oh, you're an Ohio State fan. You must have gone to Ohio State." And I'm like, no, I just lived in the state of Ohio, and therefore I'm an Ohio State fan. There is really nothing I can tell you about it that is something that somebody from outside of Ohio can really make sense of. But we are just extremely, extremely loyal. We love our teams, and it's just kind of something that it's just in your blood if you're born in that state.
And you're still a diehard fan, even though it's been how long since you've been back?
I've lived in Charlotte for 22 years now. I would never not be an Ohio State fan. I will be an Ohio State fan until I die. But it is pretty much the only team I'm still that hardcore about. Like, I want the Indians to win, but it doesn't really matter to me. And I live in a house of pretty diehard Browns fans, but it's neither here nor there.
I hear you. It's amazing how many people, with us being in Charlotte, I would say 20 to 30% of the people moving into town, and there's a lot of them, are from the Ohio area.
It's been that way for the last couple of decades. For me, it's always they either live in upstate New York, they live in New Jersey, or they live in like Ohio, Michigan, like that little pocket of the Midwest.
Yeah, definitely Ohio, definitely upstate New York. There's like marketing campaigns in those areas. It's whoever's doing it's doing a great job.
I used to say that they used, what really I thought was going on was there was like some sort of secret mission for the people who lived like in Wesley Chapel, Waxhaw, Weddington area, because it seemed like they were all from upstate New York. And so it was like, I didn't know if there was like some sort of real estate push there, but Wesley Chapel's like basically mini New York to me.
Yeah, pretty much, right? So we're recording this during late April 2020. We're still in about the 6th week now of sheltering at home, and things are in some states just getting relaxed a little bit. How are you adapting, at least in the last 6 weeks, to this new normal?
We went into quarantine, I think, about a week to 2 weeks before everyone else did. So this is technically my 7th week. The things that we did that were, I think, probably forward thinking were, we told the groups, first of all, I sent my entire company home. So that was a definite thing that we wanted to do. Then we also quarantined with our friends. And so we kind of had maybe a more neurotic list than most about how to keep us safe. And because we all follow those exact same instructions and guidelines every day, we feel comfortable being around each other. And so like basically if you leave, we call it the bubble in the tribe, right? So everybody has like a tribe at their house, and that tribe has to be safe and healthy and smart all the time. And then there's the bubble where all the tribes are. And if you go outside of for anything, really any sort of anything, we just communicate that kind of openly. So we've really been getting through just doing, I'm a type A personality, and I have no control in this environment. And therefore I'm going to do every single home project that ever existed during the 7 weeks. And so that has really kept me quite busy.
And how many are left?
How many there's never, not for perfectionists, there's never the end of the list, but it's been extraordinary, the things that we've been able to kind of get done. Because if you're a visionary and you're stuck in a house, you feed off of other people's energy. And so usually I'm around a ton of creatives, and therefore it allows me to easily sort of think of lots of different things, and it keeps my mind really occupied. When I'm in this environment, it's not the same because I'm not around as many creative people. And so I just genuinely need to funnel all of my energy into things that I can do. So, if that's wallpaper the bathroom, it is. If it's re-landscape the backyard, that's coming next.
So it's interesting how you describe people by their personalities. It's almost as if you categorize everybody, and based on what you need, or at least what you're looking for, you may hang out with certain people. Perfectionists, visionary, creatives. Do you do that on purpose? Like, is that just the way your brain works, or what?
Well, so we kind of have a running joke at my company that we only hire people who are just like us, which is type A, perfectionists, and pretty crazy. You have to have a certain amount of crazy to kind of work in that environment because it's incredibly fast paced, and people. It's not an environment just for everybody. When you're in the marketing and technology space, you have two kind of segments of people, which are the people who come up with the ideas and make it look great and make it sound great and make sure it's right. And the people who are actually going to make sure that it's delivered correctly and that we're thinking about smart ways to integrate with other platforms. Those people, while they don't seem to share a personality, do tend to do that in our office. So it doesn't really matter what your personality necessarily is like around me. I like strong people. I like people who aren't afraid to share their opinion or tell me that I'm wrong. Though you do take your life in your own hands when you do it. But for the most part, I just really enjoy people who have ideas and are not afraid to share those. So I don't know if it's so much personality as it is just the willingness to not look like a fool, not look like a fool, have a great idea that changes everything that you're not afraid to share.
I know that's one area you and I have talked about this where I struggle a little bit, is just being your true self. And it's interesting that that's what you look for in the people that you hire and the people that you work with. What do you feel the ratio or the percentages of people who are actually their true self versus people who think they are, or that want to be maybe?
I would say that, and you probably know this better than most, with me, because I'm the same person. It doesn't matter if I'm at church or if I'm in a bar or if I'm in the middle of a business meeting or if I'm talking to my kids. I am the same human being. I don't fluctuate. I don't become a different person. I don't acclimate to any environment. It's tough if you're working with me a lot or you're around me a lot to not sort of become comfortable in kind of flying your freak flag a little bit, really feeling like you're I respect people. I'm super honest, and so what I want is to see the real person. So from an authenticity level, I would say at my office, it's very high because people aren't afraid of judgment. And I think that that's kind of what keeps people very sheltered inside themselves, is when you don't feel like you're comfortable or you think that somebody's going to judge you, you tend to be a little quieter. But in our environment, even if you don't agree with people, or even if you are way out in left field, you're encouraged to remain yourself. So I'd say at my office, people are probably 80% themselves. I'm hoping it's not that other 20% doesn't come through, because we already have enough characters in that story. So yeah, I think people for the most part are pretty much themselves.
It's interesting. That's great. That's how it is at your office. I have found from my experience that a lot of people tend to get in their shell. They may think they are acting a certain way or want to act a certain way. But what advice do you have for people who are more, I don't know if the word shy, or just won't be themselves? Like, I'm assuming most people would be afraid of the results. Maybe people wouldn't like their true self. Maybe people, maybe in their work environment, it may be frowned upon. What do you say to those people who really need to come out more and show their true personality?
So I'm gonna answer it, but I'm gonna go around it just a little bit, because I usually use this analogy with people. People often will say to me, why are you so confident? And I always say, because I am my biggest cheerleader every single day. When I look in the mirror, you have a choice when you look in the mirror and you're getting ready every morning, right? You can be like, oh, my eyebrows are a mess. I have so much gray hair and all this kind of stuff. But I don't understand any of that at all, because I literally pick up my little pom-poms and I walk myself through and I'm like, look at you. You are looking great today. We are going to have an awesome day. Yes, your roots are gray. Yes, you're stuck in quarantine. Okay, sister, but we're going to put some mascara on and we're going to deal with life. And I think that to me is what I always have my own back. I'm always going to be like, this is who I am. And people can choose to accept you or people can choose not to. That's their decision. But who you show up as every day should be the strongest, best version of yourself. And you shouldn't be afraid of other people's reactions to that, because who cares? Like, I may say something stupid in this interview, right? It may be super stupid. I may flub over some words. I may do something like that. Some people would take that every night for the next 6 weeks before they go to bed and be like, why did I say that? Why am I this person? You got to just leave that stuff at the door, right? I am right now the best possible version of myself that I can be. I want to be talking to you in that way. I want to be confident in that. And I don't want to fear that other people are going to hear me and think it's more important for me to put on a show and less important for me to be authentic. The only thing that matters is being authentic.
That's a great perspective. How long have you been like that? Like, is this something you remember you've always been since you were a child? Or is there events that led up to this?
There were some complicated things in my family dynamic. I mean, I had a really complicated younger sister who dealt with some issues of her own. And the thing that I learned is that I was always going to kind of have to advocate for myself. So I was quieter when I was younger by some stretch, certainly not nearly as loud as I am now. But I would say that probably moving to Charlotte was a big thing for me. I didn't understand sort of Southern women. So that took me a long time to kind of understand, because when you're from the Midwest, the way we are with each other is very strong, very honest. There's not a lot of hurt feelings behind things. And so I kind of brought that down here. And then I learned how to a little bit adjust it for my audience. But for the most part, I've had also 10 years of therapy. That's been a big help. And learning that, it doesn't actually matter what someone else's opinion of me is. It doesn't. I mean, it's great. And I'm here to listen. And if you want to have a constructive conversation, that's fine. But chances are you're either going to like me or not like me. And I can't take up any of my time worrying which of those you choose.
That's an awesome way to look at things. I wish more people would have that take on life. And instead of worrying or crawling in their shell, they would be more, hey, this is me. If I like, doing something crazy every week, every day, coloring my hair pink or wearing certain clothes or telling stupid jokes, and I don't feel bad about it at all. I mean, I try to work on this. Actually, the more we spent some time this weekend and the more I'm with you, the more I realize I need to do this myself. And at the same time, as I look at other people and have other conversations, I feel like other people, especially in the work environment, like you mentioned, are not as open and honest as they could be.
It's a character flaw of mine that I don't easily understand other people's sort of take on that, right? So for me, it's very difficult to imagine working in an environment or being a parent or doing anything where I hid parts of myself or was different because of the environment I was in. Because if there's something, because I guess at the end of the day, you're thinking that there must be something wrong in what you're saying or thinking or doing that would require you to change that. And I'm not saying you're not going to be professional, even though I don't know how professional I really am. But I think for the most part, people think like there is something bad about me that needs to be hidden from others. Well, there's plenty of bad stuff about me. I could list it for you alphabetically. But at the end of the day, that's my truth. That's who I am. Am I too sarcastic? Yes. Am I going to change that tomorrow? Probably not. It's just, I don't know. I believe that you can waste your entire life trying to find a better version of you and being afraid of the world, or you can just step out and go, yeah, I'm not going to be for everyone. I totally get that. And that's okay, because not everyone's for me. I mean, it's just mathematical. I'm not going to like every person I run across, but I can be kind. I can be honest. I can spend time investing in a conversation with them where they remember me. I mean, you remember back when we used to go to networking things like 10 years ago. Do you remember what my favorite game to play was?
There were many of them. So which one are you referring to?
Well, I'm not really good at like normal stuff. I can't really just walk around to each person and be like, hello, my name is Kelly Yale, and da, da, da. And so what I would do is when I first walked in there, I would find some like random guy and I would tell everybody that was my husband. And so as we would walk through like the crowd, people would be like, oh, I met your wife. And eventually this guy, like, whoever would come up to me and be like, we're married. And I'm like, hey, how are you? But nobody ever forgot, because it was such an absurd thing to do. But it really was something that people remembered me for. And even now I get things on LinkedIn, like, remember when we were married at that networking thing? And I'm like, oh God, hi. That's right.
It's amazing the experiences and the stories that people have, or from connections they've had wherever it may be, where they remember distinct things just like that. Every once in a while, when people ask about my background, I'll just start making stuff up. This is just a dry sense of humor I have. And they'll be like, how many kids do you have? And I'm like, 7. And they're like, you have 7? And then they start to wonder, wait, is he serious? Should I not laugh? Or is he pulling my chain? The problem is sometimes I forgot to tell them I really don't have 7 kids. And they'd come back to me a month or two later when we talked, and they're like, oh, wow, how's your family? Like, that's a lot of kids. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But you're right. The stories like, oh yeah, I was married to Kelly at some point. Like, those are the things that stick out, and it does make you more memorable, and it doesn't really hurt anybody, right? It's all for fun.
I used to love telling people I was a manager for Hooters in Florida before I started my career, and I could go all day on this topic. I have never stepped foot in a Hooters to this day, but I would just have whole conversations. Oh, you can't imagine how hard it is with these girls. They never show up on time. They don't want to wear the hosiery. It's so ridiculous. Some of them can't even hula hoop. Go on and on and on until I was at a networking event and I was talking about it. And this girl was like, oh my gosh, I was a manager at Hooters. Which location were you at? And I was like, uh-oh. So there's always times where messing with people is going to come and really remind you that you're not nearly as smart as you think you are.
No, not at all. Although the way we both do it in those examples, we do both have to think quick on our feet. And
oh, yeah.
And I'm sure we're both good at that in a number of ways. And it definitely transfers over from a business setting. So you mentioned your business a couple of times. So why don't you tell everybody what you're doing now and how you would describe what you do?
I provide marketing and technology solutions for the mortgage industry. And so basically what I do is we have a technology platform that allows the people who are mortgage professionals to communicate effectively with everyone in their sphere, not only from a sales and marketing perspective, but even instilling confidence and giving them the skill set they need to buy a home and to live in that home, to build equity in that home once that deal closes. And so it's it's very multifaceted, but it's so much more than like your typical like CRM or CDP, because we are truly a digital marketing company that happens to run a technology platform. And so the messaging is not the same as it would be if like it's not necessarily super enterprise mortgage driven, which, usually is kind of cut and dry. This is a very, they call it empathy marketing is what's going on right now. So like, this is a perfect time to really understand how much messaging means. If you're sending out emails or text messages or videos and being like, oh my gosh, are you so excited to go buy houses? Clearly not. You can't get in a house right now. And so being smart about the way that you do market is kind of our backbone.
Right. So overall marketing and a technology spin on it in the mortgage industry directly. Is that something when you were growing up, you were like, you know what, this is exactly what I want to do?
Ironically, actually, back when I had the first digital marketing company, I met with Casey Crawford, who at the time had New American Mortgage, I think is what they called it. And he only had 11 employees at the time. And he was in Ballantyne, and I met him and we were talking about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm never going to do mortgage marketing. That's sweet.
Just to
So
explain who he is, just give
Casey
everybody
Crawford
that
is the CEO of
movement.
Movement Mortgage.
Movement.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I guess it worked out for him. So it was a terrible call on my part, but no, I never really thought I was going to go into marketing. Certainly not mortgage marketing. That's never been a dream. I don't think any little kids sit at home and draw little banks and think about doing this kind of thing. But marketing really didn't come to me until maybe like 15 years ago. And how it came was very strange because you got to think about 15 years ago, you had a computer, but for the most part, it was, you had AOL and you could, DM somebody, things like that. What I started doing was building online communities. And through building online communities, you started really understanding sort of herd mentality and the personalities that would come out and how to ask really conversation provoking questions. And then that really was on the heels of Facebook coming out of the collegiate system and really allowing other people to use it. And so social and digital marketing were already in my blood at that point. And I was a writer, so it kind of just became what I did.
So tell everybody a little bit about that. I'm familiar with this story, but as you created those communities, I feel like that catapulted you to a different level. And you're so genuine. Obviously, you tell everybody how you feel and exactly how you are, but you've got such a friendly personality that I think people, even if they just met you, are like, oh yeah, Kelly, she's my friend, right? And so
Yeah.
as you build these communities, like you just talked about, talk about how that started and then how that transformed into where you are.
So there really aren't buzzwords that are, I mean, there are, but when it comes to this particular topic, what you're really talking about is digital intimacy, right? How can I, through a computer, feel like I know a human being and I'm invested in that person, and I'm basically friends with someone who I've never met before. And that was really what we started with when it came to those online communities. And so at the beginning of it, there was a group here in Charlotte. And it was really just about starting conversations. And I was their most sort of prolific conversation starter. That got the attention of another company that wanted to build a parenting sort of website here in Charlotte. And so then I started doing it there. I was also a writer for Charlotte Parent, and they wanted to go online. So this, I mean, it sounds like 1.5 years ago, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to have a website. So I became a writer every single week. And what you do when you do that, when you blog like that and you have such a large audience, you allow people a certain proximity to your life, and they love that. And we see a lot of that now in like subscription and influence marketing and things like that, where you feel like the door is a little bit open for you with people. You get to look inside. But I think one of the interesting parts about that is that digital intimacy also makes you believe that your proximity to someone is far closer than it actually is. You may know that I have kids who are in high school, but you really have no idea who those kids are at their core, right? You don't actually know my kids. You just know that I do have them. And so when you talk about things, people can get very attached to you and think that they know you really well. And so it's a fine line between sort of, and I think you're going to see that more and more, although now influence marketing is going to be a very interesting, if you don't know what influence marketing is, it's really it's basically the same concept. I'm going to opt in to buy what you sell me because your lifestyle is something I emulate, and having that digital intimacy with you makes me feel like it's a friend giving me advice as to what to buy. And so technically that would have been that in the day. But it's an interesting world that we live in because people assume they know a lot more about you than they may actually know.
Yeah, it's just like when people have a large community on Facebook or Instagram and they feel like they have hundreds of friends, but really they haven't talked verbally to anybody in the last 2 weeks.
And there's all kinds of very, we can talk about it generationally. For our generation, typically you still really are reliant upon those physical connections. In the generation that's coming up now, and I'm saying basically anyone who's in high school or college, the herd mentality is still there, right? They're still on group chats and they're still doing things like that. They still want to look to their peers for relationships, but it's not the same behaviorally. You don't see a lot of like, we're going to have a sleepover, things like that, when they can all hop on Xbox and talk to each other there. And so it'll be interesting to see how that shift happens. I love to talk, like quarantine's taught me. I love to talk to my friends on FaceTime. That's great. But I want them. I want to hug them and touch them and go to get our nails done and things like that. I'm a social creature by nature. So I don't know what that looks like long term for this next generation, but it should be really interesting to see how influence marketing really kind of changes things. Because I mean, they're willing to watch each other play an Xbox game on YouTube. Like, I can't imagine something like, I would never watch someone sitting at a desk doing marketing. That I'm not interested in that.
Right. It's interesting. My kids are the same way. And like you, I probably push them to go outside or to talk to friends. And they're like, well, they're not doing that. Or nobody calls people nowadays, right? Like who gets on the phone and talks to somebody? So me and you are probably acting just like our parents were when we were their age. Like, why don't you do this? We used to go whatever, camp out or make a fire or whatever, right?
Go to the soda shop.
Yeah, exactly. Go to the soda shop. And so it's interesting how this quarantine has accelerated that, right? So the influencing and what'd you use? The herd mentality of just doing everything online. It actually just took it all and amplified it to like 10x, because now we are sheltered in our house. And that's really one of the only ways they have to communicate. Maybe it's because we have our guard up and we don't want that. Me and you are both, we love being around people, and we're like, how can our kids not do that? And at the same time, it might just be the new normal. Not that it's good or bad, we don't know yet, but it's not what we're used to. And so because it's something new outside that's uncomfortable, we sort of push away from it. At least I think that's our natural tendency.
That's one of the reasons I'm so glad that we quarantined with these 3 or 4 families, because I can't imagine when I see people who live like in New York City who are in a 800 square foot apartment with their family and they can't leave that apartment. I think I just don't know how they're doing it. I really don't. And it's not because it's different. It's just, I have to have space and I have to see people. Otherwise I really would be, it's already not good for me. I mean, that's just me telling you, honestly, this is not the environment for me to actually be creative. If you put me in a room full of like really smart kind of visionary type people, give me 8 hours, we'll come up with 7 companies. And that's just how my brain is. Here I'm like, I can't talk about whether or not we're going to have a chicken quesadilla for lunch every day. It's not exactly the same kind of fuel for my brain. And so but I see like my oldest will go on a drive with his friend and they'll just drive behind each other. And for them, that's enough, just being able to kind of see each other and things like that. And yet for my youngest, he's like, I don't need to see anybody. I don't need to see anybody again. I'll be in my room. Let me know what else I can do. So, right. I think generationally, they're very different than we were.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So let's go back to your business. So you started in this community, I guess this parenting, I'll let you explain it, but I know it was like a parenting online community. And tell a little bit more about that, but then tell us how you transform straight to the mortgage and the more technology side.
Well, I had been a writer my whole life, but it was considered, the written word was considered to be dying, essentially, right? Nobody was going to subscribe to newspapers. Nobody was going to buy books. So you didn't need to be a writer. And so with these sort of online communities, I found that I'm sort of an anthropologist more than I expected. Really, I learned more about myself in these situations than anything. I love data. I love understanding how people make decisions and then analyzing that and coming up with like a new way to present it to them so that they understand a concept better. There's so much about that drives what I do. Like what my brain does, it takes all of the data, comes up with a solution, and then now I want to move on to the next thing, the next hurdle. So I was in those parenting sort of digital communities for 5 or 6 years. And then a friend of mine said, who did have a true marketing background, we were talking about it, and we were talking about sort of Facebook opening up and how people would be taking their businesses on Facebook. But when we started that company, literally no one believed that such a thing would exist. No one believed that social media would have anything to do with business. I can tell you that because I was one of 20 companies at the time across the United States trying to convince people that would actually happen. No matter how many boards of directors I stood in front of, no matter who I spoke about this with, they were like, this isn't going to be a thing. I mean, you could barely convince people 12 years ago to have a good website, or no one knew what SEO stood for. And so you had content, which was usually driven by me, in marketing, and social media sort of just kind of collided at the exact same time that we were building this company. And people were seeing such a huge ROI on what we would do. And because we were the only game in town, I mean, it wasn't a bad place to be.
Sure. What was the name of the company?
Paper Blossom Marketing.
And then what did that transform into?
So I had PBM for about 3 years, and it was really successful. We had amazing clients and did a lot of really good work. And then I met with a client who I thought was going to be a client over at Fairway Independent Mortgage. And he was looking for someone to help just with content, essentially. And when I did the analysis of what mortgage marketing was doing in Charlotte, I couldn't wrap my head around how there was just nothing. And so I very kindly explained to this gentleman that, with a touch of help, you could dominate. And he's like, great, you're hired. And I said, okay. And he said, when do you start? And I said, I'm not working here. I have my own company. And for a while, I decided what I would do would be to kind of split my time between the two companies so I could kind of help do this one thing. And then it became very obvious that if I put all of my attention to this company, they were going to do tremendously. And they did. I mean, it was an enormous growth the first year I was there. And I'm not giving myself credit for that because I don't usually give myself credit for people's success, but certainly we built a massive brand here in the Charlotte area. And then that moved on to North Carolina, South Carolina. During that time, because I was really working quite hard on figuring out what messaging and what digital strategies were going to work, we decided that we would let other people use the system that we were building, and that became Motivator CRM. I have been the CEO of Motivator for a hot minute. And then that has, over the last few years, also kind of given us a little bit of a turn, and now we also own Intent Marketing. So Intent's job is basically to meet someone like you, analyze everything about the business, figure out what strategy is going to be smartest for someone to use, really do a full deep dive on what you're currently doing and how that could be better, build the brand and the messaging around it, show people how to really build their database because so many people don't know what that is, and also segment their database, and then market to all those individuals. And it sounds very, very difficult. It is. But people just have so many systems, so many things they do. People have like, oh, I'm on LinkedIn, or I have this thing I do through MailChimp, or this and this and this. And it's so crazy how many things they have. And when you align that vision behind your brand, when you have the right messaging around it, and when you are open and transparent about the good and the bad, people really trust that brand.
And so that's a lot, and that's awesome. I mean, I've seen your success continue to rise from one business to the next, and it's not stopping. I mean, there's so much more ahead, which is incredible. But as you've taken another leap, as you continue to increase to another level, there are challenges along the way. There are tons of obstacles, and you're one person. So just for everybody else listening, how many people do you employ right now, or how many did you have at Motivator, and how many approximately are at Intent?
So I still own Motivator. And so they, Motivator and Intent, are sort of the same in that we do a lot of the same things. Motivator is specifically the CRM and the marketing component that goes with mortgage. Intent is it's utilizing the same success strategies that we've seen in mortgage and in mortgage technology, but applying it to different companies, or finding a small sort of mortgage company or mortgage team and showing them how to explode with their brand. I mean, Fairway, utilizing Motivator over 5 years, grew by 25 billion in sales, and they didn't use a lot of different technology, and I'm not taking credit for that either. I'm just telling you what happened when they did
25
that.
billion or million,
And
just to
so
verify,
billion
with a B. Good.
with a
Awesome.
B. Yeah, I mean, because when you have salespeople who have, you know, real structure and real messaging and the ability to sort of strengthen relationships while expanding the brand, that's everything you want in a thing. Your question was, how many people do we have employed? There are 11 people who work directly for this company, and then there is a website team and there's a technology team. And so there's outsourced two different things, but we all work together as one.
Got it. And with you mentioned very early in this interview, being the visionary and the perfectionist. Do you hire for a role, or do you hire more to the personality? I know you mentioned this earlier. You want people that are fun, a little crazy, and perfectionist, but there's still stuff that needs to get done, and everybody's got to work together. So how do you manage people in general to make sure that they're going for the same goal?
So probably sometimes to your detriment. I mean, certainly this is a flaw of mine. I hire to personality. That's definitely been something that has been tougher. But I truly believe that people don't assess themselves for what talents they really have. I think anyone who tries to describe themselves, it's going to be missing the mark a little bit. And so what we like to do is, I don't know if you want to know all this. So we sort of have a weird system of hiring people. I send them a questionnaire of about 20 things that they fill out and email back to me before their interview. The reason I do that is because there are some things I want to know about them, but I really want to see how good of a writer they are, how strong they are within themselves and their confidence level. Oftentimes that's shown to me by how quickly they send it back. And 3 or 4 or 5 questions are absurd. One of them is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at remembering and reciting movie lines? And people don't even know what to do with that in a questionnaire. They're just like, wait, what? And what are your top 10 movies? I can judge a lot based on that. But they come in and we want them to be qualified. I mean, there's no question that they have to be qualified. But the truth is, if you're bright and you're resourceful and you're willing to work, there's almost nothing you can't be trained to do. So I'm not afraid of that. Obviously, from a technology standpoint, people have to be able to code and people have to know what they're doing. But I'd rather invest time and energy into people who are right and are a good part of our family than I want to, make sure that on paper they can, put the widgets with the sockets or whatever it is they have to do.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, if you've got a number of people that have the same skill sets of what you're looking for, who are the people that stand out, and are themselves, who are authentic, rather than they're just trying to get the job.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that everyone walks into the interview nervous. I don't ever read their resumes. I'm probably killing myself in this, but it's really true. I don't read their resumes. I only read their questions. But there's also a team there. So there's usually 3 or 4 people who are going to interview with them, and they've all read the resume. I don't care, actually, to be honest. Like I'm usually the last person you meet, and I cause the most chaos. Like you'll meet our president, you'll meet our vice president, then you'll meet Molly, who works with me. And they'll have normal conversations. And then when you get to me, the thing I want to see is how you respond to things that are going to happen to you every day. So I usually have somebody set up to just totally interrupt us in the middle to see if somebody feels comfortable. A lot of times I'll leave like a rolled up ball of paper next to their chair somewhere to see if they'll like reach down and pick it up and put it in the trash can. Cause then I know that they're definitely somebody who can who feels comfortable seeing a problem and solving it without, being weird about it. I like to just in the middle of one of their answers, just start typing an email, just to see if it really throws them off, because that's what I'm like in real life. I mean, I'm doing 12 things. You're not always going to get my full attention.
But what's the acceptable response when you start typing an email?
I mean, I've done it in every single interview I've had since I had Paper Blossom Marketing. In fact, the people who used to work there actually tell that story about how I'm basically not paying attention to them for a full 5 minutes. I really want to test their patience with that. I really want to see how far I can push them in an interview. Usually we also do 2 interviews, right? So that's the first one. And the second one is out of left field, because I genuinely want to know who you are and what you want to do. Because we're going to cultivate your talents in a way you probably didn't expect. Not one person who currently works for me works in the job they were hired for. Maybe Devin, maybe the president does, but nobody else. But he does a lot of like law stuff he never thought he was going to do. I mean, he's not a lawyer, and yet he spends a lot of time crafting contracts.
It's almost like you're hiring a Swiss Army knife in each person, so they can adapt and flow based on what is the company needs, and everybody can sort of fill in the gaps to make sure that everything works out and is successful.
It's strange. I meet people all the time that I would love to hire, and those people are never people who are walking around holding a college degree, mostly. There was a girl who provided exceptional customer service to us at Harris Teeter once, and I engaged her in conversation, and she was so quick and so smart. It wouldn't have mattered what I hired her to do. She would have been able to adapt. I think in this world, with that Swiss Army knife, let me tell you this.
Okay.
I went to inbound marketing. Inbound's this huge thing that they have every year. It's all the marketing people, right? And I went up there because I wanted to see what it was all about. This is about 3 years ago. And the one thing I noticed is that everybody in marketing has some like bizarre niche now, but it's part of their role. So they're like, oh, hey, I'm Kira, and I am a status curator. And I'm like, you're a status curator? What even is that? And they're like, oh, for our businesses, I come up with our tweets. And I'm like, holy, that's a job. But it's a job. And so not that everyone is like that, but the amount of information that you have to be extraordinarily comfortable with to be successful in marketing is tremendous. It's everything from how technology plays into it to every single platform, the ins and outs of that platform, what works on that platform, brand, advertising, PR. It's no longer just marketing, and you can't just be a status curator.
And yeah, right. Is that specific to your business? Meaning, do you feel like, I don't know marketing enough, but is your field, the marketing side, where it's like, hey, it's all on all day, nonstop? Or is it just that there are certain times or projects you're working on where people have to be on and have to be able to adapt quickly? Because you keep saying you're trying to cause the chaos, right? So by causing that makes sense. I mean, we all have those long days or projects that we're working on that need to get filled in. And if somebody's freaking out, and you just want to smack them and say, calm down, just get on with this. And then they're probably not the right fit. But is that every week for you, or is that just the environment that your company is in?
I would assume most marketing companies are kind of controlled chaos. I would assume that. I don't know that to be true, but it's certainly always been the case for us. What we love to say is that in order to work for us, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. It is, you never know from one day to the next what life is going to look like. Technology is that same way where, you can have something, you can be having a perfectly fine day and something hits and you have to react to it. And you can be in total crisis mode in a moment. People have extremely high expectations when they pay for a service. Whether that is in line with what they're actually paying and what that service is providing, that doesn't matter because you're in a customer service related field. So people can get very, customers can be very demanding. Our employees are human beings. And so, some days are really normal days. Other days are crazy, but you also have a hyper visionary leading your company. That's not easy for anyone at all, because genuinely, I don't have to make the platform any better. It's good. Just sell it. It's good. But I can't, because every day I learn new things that can make it better, and I want that for it. So there's never a time that my people don't have some major project that they are doing or looking into or researching. So it is very stressful for like most people. That would be a very stressful, loud, exciting, but chaotic sort of environment.
Right. I think you're right. Finding the right people or person for that job is important, where somebody like you or I could thrive in it. But a lot of people just want to, hey, stick me in this cubicle and give me the work and I'll come back. I'll be done at 5.
Which is always amazing to me, because also because I don't know how people, like, I do understand how people work 9 to 5. And you're not expected to do anything else on my team. In fact, whether I'm a workaholic or not has nothing to do with whether you should be a workaholic or not. However, because you find people who are the same personality type who can thrive in that sort of environment, it's not 9 to 5 for us. But we do encourage, especially the sort of younger generation, to unplug from that. And, hopefully they're doing that in quarantine and are able to do that. But I also believe wholeheartedly that being able to take on chaotic things and being able to not freak out in those moments is a skill set in and of itself.
Totally agree. So speaking of quarantine, how has your business changed, whether it's gotten better during quarantine, or what are some of the adaptations you've had to take on in the last 5, 6, 7 weeks, and what do you think is going to come out of it for the company?
I am a big believer in things happening as they will and things happening for a reason. I've been talking for years about the way that technology is going to impact the real estate and mortgage industry. I have been, I think, the loudest person saying, we are going to have to change our behaviors to integrate technology into your life. It's a very personal thing, buying a house. You still want a human being to be talking to you about making the largest financial investment of your life. You want to be talking to a person about where am I moving, and count on their expertise for negotiation. And there's a lot of stuff that people definitely still need to be part of. But luckily, because we are the kind of company we are, and we're so agile, it allows us to put the right messaging out to people. Right now, real estate agents don't want to hear from people that this is no big deal, and they don't want to hear from people that technology is coming to take over. They want to hear that we're all in it together. And if there's technology that's going to take over, it's going to be something that's going to automate the mundane stuff that they don't want to do and allow them to really take care of people. The heart of any good marketing campaign and any good company at all is that your intention should always be to take care of the people who you work with. And that's the approach. And so with this sort of crisis marketing that we're having to do right now, that's what we're doing. We're telling people, hey, you were pre-approved to buy a house and you cannot go and tour that house right now. But here are your options. You can do a virtual tour, or I'm standing right here with you. I'm waiting for the moment that this all stops, and then we're going to get you in that home that you love. And so being really smart about the way you communicate to people is everything right now. So I don't have a crystal ball for where mortgage is going or where real estate will be. But I do know that having integrated platforms that work with one another is unbelievably imperative. And that's what we do. And making sure that your messaging isn't so missing the mark so much that it's going to cause concern for other people. And you see that so much in what we do, right? Just like, oh, hey, especially like when you buy leads from Zillow and things like that, right? These people who like call them constantly, hey, I'm going to get you pre-approved. And somebody's like, I'm in my pajamas, I'm eating fried chicken, it's 2 PM, and I don't even know if my job is stable. Why are you calling me? That's tone deaf. You have to be smart about how you communicate to people and be really respectful of the environment that 20 million people right now are out of jobs. They're not thinking about, go ahead.
No, that's all right. No, that's a great point. So you mentioned you've got to communicate effectively and you've got to use the right platform. So I've got 2 questions. The first is, how does your company do that? And when you say platforms, or just give me an example overall of how you would communicate and which platforms you may use.
So when I say platforms, typically they're social media platforms. Everybody knows what those are: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those kinds of things. But all of those platforms require different messaging. And if people don't understand that, that's your first mistake. And then you have platforms like email platforms. People could use MailChimp, people could use Constant Contact, people might have a proprietary thing at their company, but whatever that email platform looks like, whatever they're using. Then of course there's phone, strategies as well. How you call people, how you text people, how did people opt into being texted, what that messaging looks like, what's compliant. So there's, and then there's your entire online. So you have your website, how people find you through those searches that they're looking for. What are people currently searching for that makes sense to your business? So there are a lot of different platforms. When I say platforms, it's really sort of, it encapsulates quite a lot right now. I think the second part of it was how people communicate through those platforms. Was that correct?
Yeah. Now, how do you, if you know those are the platforms, I guess the first question is, how does your company do that? And the second question is, how can other companies in your industry or others take advantage during this time?
So the way we do it is we have spent a really long time becoming incredibly good friends with different pieces of technology that integrate into our system, which allows us to very easily sort of take in a lot of data and crunch that data and come up with opportunities for people. And that's a lot of what we spend our time doing, is showing people opportunities where they didn't think there were opportunities, and keeping tabs on people sort of long term and making sure that that messaging is correct depending on sort of what someone's game plan is. So if somebody's going to buy a house in 9 months, and how are we going to talk to them about the strategies they need to really employ in that next 9 months? So what we do is very different. We control all messaging, and I think that is the only way to do it, to be honest with you. Having professionals who understand all of the things you have to do in order to have successful messaging is, I genuinely don't know how other companies don't do that. However, if you're creating your own messaging, that's great too. So let's say that you're using MailChimp, right? So you have a database that you've established. The second thing you have to do once you have a database established is to figure out who are the audience for the messages, okay? Because, so Keith, you're a financial strategist. So you may have a database with, here are all of my current clients, here are all of my past clients, here are people I've spoken with who aren't ready to maybe move to that point yet. Here are the people who refer me business, and here's everybody else. Now, you can send the same message to all those people. Sure. And it can be like, here's what's going on in the market, and you may feel X, Y, or Z. But it's smarter to have just very clear funnels for all of those things, and the messaging be really succinct to what those people need to know. As far as the messaging itself goes, if you're not great in a conversation in general, chances are you probably shouldn't write your own content. That's not me being judgy. I'm just saying that that's probably true, because if you are nervous about saying something in a crowd, you're just going to be given a microphone to say it louder if you're writing something for your email. You have to make sure it's something that people want to read. How do you engage them? You engage most people through honesty and empathy. Right? I don't know what's going on in your world.
Say
the thing
those
I
two
do
things
know
again.
that right now is that we all feel.
Sorry,
I don't
Kelly.
even know.
Say those two things again.
Smush out.
Yeah.
I hope that what I said was you have to have empathy, and you have to really, I don't know what the other thing I said was.
I'm sure it was good. All I heard was empathy.
I'm sure. Well, you have to, so think about what you want to do. It's empathy, it's personality, and it's really being honest about the current situation. A lot of people love the Pollyanna, the life out of their marketing. I don't know why they do that. Right now, I'm not going to be sending you hey, now's the time for a jumbo loan and you should buy a mansion and all your dreams are going to come true. No, that is not what we're saying. What we're saying right now is this is a scary time. And the reason that you hire professionals during a scary time is to shepherd you through. And your dreams don't cease to be your dreams just because there's an obstacle. We're here to make sure that those dreams are always going to come true. And you are not alone. Even if you're alone where you live, you're not alone, period, because I'm reaching out to you. But coming from the heart and being authentic and being honest, I can tell you right now, definitely works, because I have entire companies built on that premise. You don't have to spend your time pretending things are all going to go back in a neat little package. It's not going to happen. It's going to be tough, and we're going to have to soldier through together, and people are going to experience loss. And if you're somebody who experiences loss, you have somebody to go through it with you. And if you're somebody who's lucky enough to, get through this whole thing unscathed, then you're a strong person who can help others. And so that's just kind of the way we look at all of our messaging. It's honest. It's forward thinking without being Pollyanna.
Right. So what I'm taking away from this, and for everybody that's listening, is continue to be yourself and authentic. Communicate what's important for their objectives while looking out for the end client, but at the same time, don't sugarcoat it. Like, you have to be thoughtful of the message you're sending and the group that you're sending it to, rather than just shouting it to the same message to everybody. Would that be accurate?
Shouting. The segmenting of the audiences, even in social media, is super important, and people don't know how to do that. But you should segment your audiences no matter where you go. You should be saying different things to different people. I mean, Keith, if you're going to send out a newsletter today where you're like, oh my God, the stock market's awesome and you're super safe, you're the richest person I know, I'm going to be like, okay, there's something wrong with him. He has clearly been, injecting Clorox. We should probably talk to him immediately. But instead, what you say is, this is where we're at. Okay. And you can trust me to keep telling you this is where we're at. And when it gets better, I'll tell you. And if it gets scarier, I'll tell you. But you can trust that the relationship we have created is one built on honesty and authenticity. And so that's the person I want to work with 100% of the time.
I totally agree. And I think if we look around at companies that we both know, local companies or international companies, the ones that I feel that are run the best and that are timeless are the ones that have that same attitude, right?
I totally agree. And some of the, on Twitter, Wendy's is kind of famous for this, right? So Wendy's right now, is always super snarky in their Twitter feed. And while that is not for everyone, it's for lots of people. And just finding sort of that strange personality that really resonates with humans is sort of fun, whether that is fun, whether that's serious, whatever it is, you have to show up in a way that's memorable, but also really real to your brand. And then there's some company right now too that's giving out, like, I can't think of who it is, it's so random, but they're giving out like coronavirus health updates when it's Steakum. Look at the Steakum. I swear to God, it's the Steakum Twitter account.
Wow.
And they're giving out some of the best, most factual stuff about coronavirus that you'll find on the internet. They just decided one day that that's what they were going to do, because in the face of crisis, people want to believe that people are leading them and giving them the correct information. And Steakum apparently just took up the charge.
Hey, they got to leave an impression. And if that's how it is, so be it. They've got to stay relevant right now.
Was Steakum relevant before? I don't even know. I mean, does anyone eat that?
No, well, it's sort of personal. There's a family joke we have on Steakums I won't get into here that my kids give me a hard time about. So relevant is all in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But I haven't seen them out there. I'm sure people eat them. I don't have anything against it. I did at one point when I was younger. Speaking of that, let's talk about this as we start to wrap up. So is there an event that shaped your life when you were younger, let's say high school or younger, that you can share it or not, but that was impactful to you enough that you still remember it and the results you still apply every day, every week, whether personal or from a business perspective?
I mean, yeah, I was a sophomore in college. I was an English major. I wanted to be a writer. And we had a teacher assistant named James at the University of Akron. And he came in our class one day, threw his book bag on the desk and looked at us and said, basically, you're all idiots if you think that you're going to grow up someday and write the next great American novel, because the written word is going to die and you're never going to make more than $30,000 a year being an English teacher at some high school. So that's where your career is going to take you.
Wow.
And I was like, holy crap. I mean, no matter how bad your day is, like, this is 1995. We don't need to, throw ourselves out the window about this. But it was so impactful to me that I ended up changing majors. And so I became an interior design major and went through the next few years as an interior design major. And now looking back on that, the one thing that is always surprising is, number one, I pivoted based on the opinion of someone who was simply angry and having a bad day. And so what I learned from that is, like, you can't let other people's emotional response change anything about the way that you are moving forward. But also that he was really, really wrong. The thing I learned is that someone's opinion or someone's bad day cannot really affect the rest of your life or how you make decisions. But I also have to admit that guy changed my life today, like the way my life went in the future, because I was able to think outside of the plan and the vision that I had for myself. I was able to acclimate to a different sort of field. It gave me tons of new information about how to be creative in something where I felt uncomfortable. But it also just sort of gives me the last laugh, because content and writing are everything in what's going on right now. So the written word isn't dead in the slightest. You just see different ways and different paths of utilizing that same creativity and messaging as you go forward. I may not write the next American novel, but I did talk thousands and thousands and thousands of people through the process of buying their home, through the words that I wrote. And so there's people who have had really great experience and a ton of confidence in doing something that's very scary And while they didn't read a book that I wrote, they definitely read words that made them feel like they were capable of doing something that a lot of people would find really.
Yeah, that's powerful, and thanks for sharing. It's amazing how each of us had formative events as we were growing up, that some we remember, probably most we remember, but others that we don't. But it affects the way we make decisions today, whether it's in our personal relationships, our work ethic, whatever it may be. And that one for you seemed like it had a dramatic effect for the positive, because it gave you resilience to keep pushing through, but also to listen to your heart and what your brain's saying versus what anybody else around you is saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you learn so many positive and negative things being an entrepreneur. You know, you learn almost always exclusively sort of by failure or by other people failing you. And those are really extraordinarily difficult life lessons to take in. But the way I look at it, and we were actually just having a conversation, myself and another entrepreneur last week, and I said, if you let people who may not have your best interest in the heart ever tear you down, you'd never build another company. You'd never even want to build a company, because it happens so frequently. If it changes your heart, if it makes you bitter, you're never going to be able to be open and really resilient, because you have to be. You have to just always be thinking about the next thing and how you can help people. And if your heart is good, you're going to be a great business owner. If your heart is for profit, you're going to be disappointed because you're only going to get so far. I mean, Keith, one of the things I always tell people about you is you worked with me for 2 years before you remotely made any money from our relationship as my financial strategist. No one puts 2 years of work into a relationship before it pays off, except people who really believe that the way to build a business and way to build relationships is to ask first, what can I do for you? And then figure out how that's going to fit into a working relationship moving forward.
Exactly. And I've learned as I've gained more experience and gotten older that those type of people that have the same mindset I do, you know, you keep those people close, because they're not as many as people think there are when everything's teared down and broken down, and you can see the true self. So you made a comment earlier, we only have bandwidth for so many friendships and relationships. That's personal and business. But then you made a comment to me last week about like your inner circle, and that inner circle is only the people that you really gel with that have the same beliefs. And for me, that's a smaller circle, because those people that care more about the relationship and the other person, business owners, entrepreneurs, etc. That comment you made was great. It said, if your heart is about caring for other people, you'll do incredible. But if your heart is for profit, then you will be disappointed.
Yeah, I think you're always going to be disappointed, because I hope that my company does well, but I don't hope it does well for me. I hope it does well because I want a better life for the people who work for me. And I want people who use our product. I used to say this all the time. If you gave me a choice between a check for $10,000 and one story of a life that my company has changed, I'll take the story every single day. And for us, it's been incredible to watch people's careers or branches explode with business because they've been able to use this. But nothing will, I highly doubt a moment of my career will be more impactful than when I was in Denver and this woman came up to us and said that she was an assistant to somebody, but because of our technology, she decided that she wasn't going to be an assistant. She was going to go into become a mortgage originator full time, and that she, for the first time in her life, made 6 figures, and she opened an account so that she could send her son to college. And she just wanted to take a second to say thank you. If you think that that doesn't drive my business and my everyday why, then I don't know what to tell you, because I don't care what a spreadsheet says. Someday a kid is going to go to college because of what we do. People are going to, people are going to feel confident right now as this coronavirus is going on through our messaging of thinking, my dreams aren't dead of owning a home. They're just paused. And being a voice of reason in a time of uncertainty is almost the best thing that you can possibly do for other people around you.
Yeah, that's incredible. That story you'll always remember, and also other people will remember, right? Because it's so powerful. The stories around us are everything.
Mm-hmm.
Last question, then we'll wrap up, and we'll sort of end on a fun note. You have $150 that you can't spend on anybody else but yourself. What do you either buy, or what do you do with that money to have fun?
So, because you said you can't.
Thank you so much, by the way, for taking a breath before you answer what you really, really want, and you filtered it. And yes.
Because you said I couldn't spend it on other people, and that's really what's tough for me, is because the very first thing I'm going to think about is like, oh my gosh, what could I do with this? Like, how can I make someone like happier, like using this $150? If I had to spend it on myself, I've kind of toyed around with like some of those master classes. I don't know if you ever see those, and I don't know how much they are, but those are the kinds of things that I love. I love learning from experts in their space, how they became good at something. And so there's a Thomas Keller one where he talks about sort of how he decided to become a chef and some of the techniques that he uses. And obviously Thomas Keller is a world-renowned chef. And so that would be the kind of thing I would probably invest in, something that I know it's so sappy. I'm such an entrepreneur. I wish I wasn't this way, but I am. But that would definitely make me kind of sit back and not work, and then learn from someone else what made them passionate and how they came to be who they are today.
That's awesome. Always striving to get better and to be your best self. That's how it should be.
I don't know if there's a finish line somewhere. I hope there is, because a lot of times, I don't read like self-help books. I don't do stuff like that. Not really, but I do love any conversation where I can learn a lot. I love to be the dumbest person in the room. I advocate for being the dumbest person in the room. I have no problems with it. But most people think I know what I'm talking about, which is, I think, maybe my greatest skill. But it's so great to listen to other people talk and hear their ideas and hear their stories and figure out what drove them to become passionate about one thing or another.
Yeah, you can't sit still. You have to be always moving. Not you. I think collectively, people need to always be moving. It's like Shawshank Redemption, right? If you're not living, you're dying. And so you've got to get better each and every day. And your answer just is an example of that. You got to invest in yourself. There's no slowing down. There's time to relax. Don't get me wrong, but you've got to continue learning and getting better.
Agreed.
So, awesome. Thank you for your time today, Kelly. This has been incredible. Always enjoy our conversations.
Me too. I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to learning from other people as well.
That's right. Stay well. Talk soon.
Right. Okay. Bye.